Hello, everyone! Welcome back to Middle School GSA. I'm Felonious Ferris. My pronouns are they, them. And I'm joined by...
You know, that's not how you're supposed to introduce me. I'm Demigloom and my pronouns are she, her. Also, I don't know if you've noticed this, and I don't know if I've told you this yet, but every single time we record, I say it's your turn to do the intro. You do all the intros, and you seemingly have not noticed this. I don't think I've done like 3 intros ever out of the 15 episodes. I do about 1/5 of the intros.
I really hadn't noticed.
You haven't noticed?
No.
Well, think about it just for a second. Could you recall, do you even know what I sound like doing the intro? It barely happens ever.
I don't, listen, you can't expose me for being an NPC, okay?
Okay. I'm gonna pull up some overstimulating TikTok footage to get me through this because I can't click my mouse.
Please don't.
Not for the show, just for my own sanity to get through this. Because normally when I do podcasts, we don't care about audio quality, and I just play video games. And we record in Craig, and that gets all my clickety-clackities are a little less hard, or a little harder to hear. But since we're recording in Audacity and we're doing the good audio, the good kind, I can't be playing video games during all this. So I have to just somehow stimulate my mind. Maybe I'll download Tetris on my phone.
Do it.
That might be helpful. But yeah. How are you doing, Felonious Ferris?
I'm so tired. I'm so very tired. I got a new job, and I love it, but I'm so tired.
Are you gonna say what your job is or no? Don't say. You're gonna dox yourself. Don't say what you do for a living.
I am going to dox myself.
There's only so many.
There's only a handful of places.
There's only a handful of places, and probably a smaller handful of places that'll hire non-binary people. So,
actually, funny story. On the Indeed job application, they asked me if I identified with my sex assigned at birth, and I was like, "Oh fuck, I'm not getting this job." But then they hired me anyways, and everyone's really nice and
wait,
really
did you answer the question honestly?
Yeah, I'm not about to go into a workplace that hates trans people. I'm not playing that game. That's
you know where I live. You know where I live, and you know that I don't have much of a choice. But
yes. But as long as I live in this liberal hotspot, I'm not working somewhere that's run by people who aren't gonna respect me.
I kind of like working with people who don't respect me. It's kind of a weird thing.
Is it like a degradation thing?
No, it's not a fetish. Anything like that. Walmart is the last place I would arrive in any of my sexual fantasies. Let's be real now. But there's just I don't know. It's maybe it's emotional self-harm, because the word that's coming to mind is reality check, and that's some like cope.
Yeah, that is.
It feels like I feel like I like to have a good grasp on how people actually feel. I like to have a good understanding. I like to experience it firsthand. I think it's an important thing to experience in a world that hates you, to experience the hatred firsthand, just to understand it. That's not because I enjoy it necessarily. It's because it's
like at a job though. You don't want to spend.
They're not.
How much are you working a week?
Not counting my breaks, I work 32 hours a week.
You don't want to spend 32 hours out of your week in a place where everyone fucking hates you for existing. That's not. Well,
that's not really
healthy.
The case That's not the case with my my fellow employees, really. Don't get me wrong. I hear racist shit in the break room, and I'm surrounded by fucked up people.
Jesus Christ.
But in my department, I actually have 2 trans people, and my team lead is like super accepting, super nice guy. Best fucking boss I could have ever asked for. I literally got lucky enough to be placed in the best department in the entire store, at least for someone like me. And it's great. I absolutely love my coworkers.
Wild.
But the customers...
All of my coworkers are like 20-something white women, but they're really nice.
Yeah, I'd rather deal with 20-something white women than 30-something white men.
Yeah.
It's like one step higher on the hierarchy.
My current manager is a 30-something white man, and he is wonderful. So, but
One of the good
your
ones.
customers.
Me and my coworker friend were talking a little too loud about bi, pan, lesbian discourse, and let's just say he had the wrong opinion. But some like old lady walked by and was like, "Well, if you read the Bible, you know that none of that is okay."
See, if I worked at Walmart and she said that to me, I just tell her to kill herself.
No, that's objective. That's the wrong dialogue option. Okay, the right dialogue option is, "Oh, cool, I'll check that one out." Like when someone tells you to read the Bible, respond exactly how you would respond if somebody recommended a completely random book that you're uninterested in. Just like, "Oh, I'll check that one out. I'll give it a shot." Because if you say kill yourself, they win. This is like the first thing they teach you in special ed. Like when you if you stoop to their low, you lose. You immediately lose because they want to piss you off. That was an attack. If you literally just say, "Oh, okay, cool," if you could show them that you don't care, that means nothing to you, that you think that they're stupid and laugh at them, that's the best thing you can do. If you like rage, kill yourself, you're problematic. That's the worst thing. Worst thing you can
do. See, objectively, I agree with you, but there's just something so satisfying about casually telling an elderly evangelical woman to kill herself for recommending the Bible to you.
Nah.
It's so gratifying.
Listen, that one day, when you first started not taking your antidepressants, you would disagree with this. You were spitting all types of crazy shit that day, and now you're just back to your normal fucking annoying woke scolding self. I hate it. Are you back on your meds yet?
No.
Okay.
No,
well,
I'm not.
You need to get back on your meds and then stop taking them again. You need to like basically waterboard yourself with antidepressants, because that like first day off of antidepressants is like the real clarity.
No,
like,
I'm
back
not
when you
even
were in,
actually.
Back when you were
I'm
in
still
purgatory.
not off the meds yet. I'm
Yeah, I
not
know.
off the meds yet. I'm still on 30 milligrams. But next, I'm gonna be in a few days. I'm gonna be going off the meds.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah. We'll see if I kill myself.
No, don't do that.
I won't do it.
That's bad optics.
I won't.
Killing yourself is bad faith.
Yeah, it's true. It's cringe,
problematic.
To be honest.
Problematic. It's ineffective activism. That's the problem with it. Do we want to jump into? No. I always act like I want to jump right into the topic. We have fucking comments. Pepito says, "Was this in response to Gideon video?" I don't know what Gideon video this would be in response to. I know he makes fun of furries, but no, this was not in response to anything Gideon put out. Although I will say, I like Gideon. I think he's a really, really funny YouTuber, especially the shit that he does with... Huh?
No, you continue.
The shit that he does with Nico, specifically, I think it's fucking hilarious. I think he's an asshole. And, like, I kind of shake my head at a lot of the shit he says, but I think he's funny as fuck, personally. But I haven't watched a whole lot of his stuff. I don't know. Maybe he thinks non-binary people don't exist, and he's a piece of shit. What, do you know anything about Gideon?
I just know I've only seen clips of him him being an absolute jackass.
Yeah, and sometimes it's really funny. He has this series called The Biggest Menace with Nico Amanal. How do you pronounce his name? Fucking Nico. He's a great YouTuber. One of the greatest trolls. Nico Amalana. Nico Amalana and him have a series called The Biggest Menace, where it's kind of like Impractical Jokers, except it's not just like saying things that are weird in front of people. It's more so they force each other to do ridiculously embarrassing shit.
Wow.
Gideon forced Nico to give a literal TED talk on why incest should be legal. And he had like the entire thing planned out from the beginning. Like he had to first, like, the slides weren't working, and that was intentional. And he didn't have any prep time. He didn't know what he was gonna say until, so he's just like sitting there all uncomfortably. And he has like an audience of like 200 people or some shit.
Jesus
And he has
Christ.
to give like the worst argument ever. It's so fucking hilarious.
Okay, that is pretty funny.
The fact that he forced his friend to go through that, I love it. I should acknowledge the fact that I recorded an entire solo episode last week, or the week before last week. And Audacity just crashed, and I had no way to. I looked up on YouTube all types of ways to like get the audio back, and none of them worked. It was just gone forever, and it was one of the best fucking podcast episodes I ever made. What was it about? What did I talk about? You'll never know. It's gone forever. And I responded to all these comments already. Oh, I'm still mad. I had like a whole fucking mental breakdown over losing that episode because it was one of the greatest things I had ever been there for. And of course, God just wouldn't let me have it. He wouldn't let me have the one good solo episode. So, yeah, it's going to take a lot to get me to do another one. I'm going to have to feel really motivated because that made me so fucking angry. And of course I didn't bring Craig. Of course I didn't have a Craig backup because I was so fucking stupid. I wasn't even in the Discord call. I didn't even think to get a Craig backup. But anyways, I responded to this. David Fern says, there's no problem in acknowledging that low empathy can be a symptom of autism. The problem is assuming that low empathy automatically makes someone an evil monster. Empathy just refers to someone's ability to connect with others' emotions. Not having that makes it easier to be an asshole, yes, but it's also totally possible to understand what's right and wrong without also understanding how it makes others feel. That's the first part. We can talk about the second part after. I want to hear what you have to say to this.
Yes. And also, as long as you acknowledge that not all autistic people have low empathy, that's a relatively small percent in my experience. Most of us, at least this is completely anecdotal, but most of us have heightened empathy in my experience, which is weird. But yes, and I actually, a friend of mine, has this weird thing. They feel empathy, but they don't feel guilt or shame, which can be problematic for them. But there's
no guilt or shame at all.
At all, zero.
Honestly, guilt and shame are like at the bottom of the tier list of emotions. They're quite unproductive.
I don't know. Guilt it lets you know when you've done something that is against your values.
But like,
and that can be really helpful.
Absolutely, but you can acknowledge that without dwelling on it and allowing it to like make you feel bad, and that's kind of what guilt is.
Yes.
I think once you I think you can master guilt. Like you can overcome guilt and experience all the benefits of guilt without allowing it to bring you down. But that's some like fucking crazy shit that most people are never going to achieve in their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But my friend, they're just able to like logically say this is the right thing to do, it's wrong to do this, and then they don't hurt anyone. A lot of people kind of jump to the conclusion that having like weird empathy like that automatically makes you a terrible person, and it absolutely does not.
No, people have this weird sentimental idea, and this is a little bit unrelated, that just like bad things are bad because they're bad, and if you try to explain it or navigate it logically, you're just like a sociopath. Like if I were to say like killing people is bad, people would be like, yeah, killing people is bad. Why? Because it's the wrong thing to do, and that's what gets you the fucking applause. But if you're like, well, okay, let's talk about it actually. Killing is bad because it creates human suffering, it creates these things, it creates that things, and you can logically conclude that killing people overall, not the best thing for the greater good of humanity. And when you try to explain it like that, people are just like baffled. And they think you're fucked up somehow. And it's like, okay, so things are just bad because they're bad. Cool. That's how we're going to navigate morality. bad things are bad because they're bad. Or like if you say like racism, why is racism bad? Well, racism is bad because you're like, I'm not even going to explain why everything's bad. Things are bad. If you try to explain why something is bad for the greater good of humanity, people get fucking pissed at you, and I don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And once you come to this realization, it's less like knee-jerk emotional reactions, and you can navigate shit more logically, and people don't like that. People like knee-jerk reactions. People like knee-jerk morality. That's how people do shit. I'm sorry for making a bunch of points that I'm not going to elaborate on. I'm selfish, and I don't feel guilt. I don't feel any guilt for it. So we can move on to the next part of David Fern's comment. They said, also, I hate to ask this, but could you elaborate on your thoughts about kink at Pride? How should kink be acknowledged and celebrated as part of queer culture, if not at Pride parades? Not around children. That's my answer. And that's a pretty...
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that hard. Just do that elsewhere. If you're going to have an event where children are going to be, don't put live porn in front of their face. It's the last thing children need to be seeing.
And I think that there are ways to incorporate it into Pride that aren't sexually explicit that would be fine. Like,
what do you mean by that?
I've seen people at Pride like wearing one of their pup tails, and that's fine. Like, no child is gonna look at that and go, "Oh yeah, this person is into BDSM, and now I'm traumatized for life." Like that, and like there are just symbols associated with it. Like I think you can even go as far as wearing some leather and latex pieces without it like really crossing a line. Like just don't go to Pride in like a gimp suit with dildos all over your body. That's it.
Yeah, honestly, people who are baffled by that can go fuck themselves. It's pretty. I think it's pretty obvious why that's not a good thing.
And you can save all of that more explicit stuff for a private environment. We have after parties. This is why we have after parties.
Yeah, no, but the people really just want to, walk around covered in dildos around children.
And I can't help. It's one of the things that sabotages our community the most, because then whenever a Republican pulls up a picture of like a bunch of people in gimp suits at eye level with a child at Pride interacting with the child, I just have to like shrug my shoulders and be like, you're completely right. That is really fucked up.
Our community is infested with pedophiles and gross people who don't understand the boundaries that ought to be associated with being around children.
I just want... We need to draw a line. Do not cross the line of involving bystanders, and especially children in your kink by just displaying it publicly. I definitely... I know that a lot of the reason why the BDSM community and the LGBT community kind of bonded with each other is because both were made to feel ashamed of themselves for their sexual proclivities, which, I don't think that you should feel ashamed of yourself. It just doesn't need to be sexually explicit stuff in front of the public all the time.
Yeah, no, but people will literally take, if you say, hi, maybe we shouldn't have this around children, they're going to take that as you being like, that they're just going to, in the most bad-faithed way possible, use that as a way to assume that you just think children shouldn't know that gay people exist, or this is erasure.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
Yeah.
It's like, I think there are plenty of things that we don't show children that we are okay with. Like, because I don't want to take my kid to see fucking Deadpool 3, Does that mean I believe in Deadpool erasure and I don't believe in, the artistic value of Deadpool? No, it means I just don't want my kid to see it because they're, children. The way what we show children is something we're very careful about, and that's something we ought to respect.
Yes.
But yeah. I'm sorry, David Fern, if I was yelling at you. Insight Zoidberg says, good movie, very entertaining. I have no joke today, I just like this show a lot.
What show are they talking about?
Middle School GSA.
Oh, okay.
Um, but yeah, we do have a topic tonight that we want to get to, so we should probably do that. We're talking
Yep.
about pronouns, and me and Felonious Ferris really disagree. Felonious Ferris thinks Felonious Ferris is a gender traditionalist. Uh, they don't believe in neopronouns.
That's not true.
Okay, let's just let's just jump right into it because I think everybody fucking knows that we believe gender is a spectrum. We believe that
Uh-huh.
non-binary people are real. We don't need to explain why he and she aren't the only pronouns. So let's just jump right into fucking neopronouns, if that's okay
Mhm.
with you. Unless you have anything else you want to
Yeah.
say about pronouns.
Um. Nope. Neopronouns it is.
All right, what do you think about neopronouns?
Um. I take a slightly harder stance than is currently socially acceptable among 15-year-olds on Twitter. I think neopronouns are cool. If you want to if you don't like they and you want to come up with your own shit, that's how language works. We come up with new words all the time to fill in holes when it's needed. Um, the issue comes when I continuously see people with like cat/cat self in their bio, or like even things like I think I've seen Five Nights at Freddy's neopronouns
And
unironically in
what's
someone's
wrong with
bio,
that?
because that's not gender. That to me it feels a bit silly, to be honest.
Okay, then
I
what
it's just
what is gender?
what is gender?
Yeah, what is someone's gender identity?
Um I think it has to do with gender expression and the way that you want to be treated with others, the way you want to fit into society, the way you want to be perceived, the way you perceive yourself. Um,
But what makes expression like what entails being gendered? Because you say gender expression. Like I'm not really getting a definition here. What's the difference between like gender expression and just expression, like expressing yourself? Because I
um,
would say that traditionally it would be uh in relation to traits associated with sex somehow. But then it gets kind of removed because then there's traits associated with the rejection of sex, which is still which is still technically in relation to sex, right? Or traits associated in relation to the rejection of the relation to the rejection of sex, but it's somehow removed from sex, right? Gender
yes.
concepts always. It has to do with your
Um,
relationship with sex somehow. In some you could trace it back to sex somehow.
um, I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. It's complicated and it's vague and nebulous. Um, I just don't think that really liking cats is a gender identity. That gets into like I don't think that we should just define gender so broadly that it essentially means just things that you're interested in. That that like I believe that gender has a meaning, and I don't think that it should be defined out of existence.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a gender abolitionist either. I mean, I don't know if you are, but I'm not a gender
No.
abolitionist. I think gender abolition is cis bullshit, honestly. Um, but I simply, I simply don't care about neopronouns. And in my eyes, if somebody is so discomfortable with being called anything but cat self, then so be it. You know,
I have a
I've
difficult time believing that someone would be uncomfortable being called anything but cat self.
I think babies who are, this is no offense to anybody, but I think babies who are raised with iPads in their strollers have such a different understanding of the reality around them that who fucking knows what makes you uncomfortable at this point. We live in a world where people are more attached to their usernames in Discord friend groups than they are anything within like material reality. So at this point, it's not
If it
my place to
makes
tell people. It's not my place to tell people whether or not like it's important to them to be called something, and it's not my place
I
to
think
doubt them.
that I think that if it makes someone intensely suicidal to be called anything other than cat self, I will call them that. You know, at that point, whatever. But it's extremely odd, and it feels like just a radically different definition of gender, more radically different than I think makes sense to most people.
Well, you could say the same exact thing about non-binary people, could you not?
This is true.
I think the concept of not being a man or a woman just within in your identity is so like alien to some people that it might as well be frog gender. Like to people in like their 50s and 60s. So, listen, some people
Frog gender.
what?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Discord didn't pick up that laughing fit. But yeah. I mean, I'm not denying that it's an alien concept to some people.
Well, I feel like that's a big part of your argument is the fact of like how alien it is. And I will say this. I have a very hot take. Go on.
Okay.
Were you going to say something?
I think that it is because what non-binary means to me and what non-binary means to most non-binary people that I know is existing outside of gender norms and roles, or existing like with a combination of gender roles and norms, or jumping from one gender role and norm to the next.
The way I define it on my debate with Kathy, which you should all go listen to, by the way, is just somebody who exists either. I've defined a non-binary person typically, and it means something completely different to fucking everybody these days. So there's no such thing as a solid definition for like any word, but like generally speaking, non-binary refers to somebody who exists within the context of the male-female spectrum, but not solidly on the male or female side. Whether this means you're, completely outside of the spectrum or completely in the middle, closer to one side or the other, you do exist within the concept of this binary. But that doesn't, but you're not like either a male or female. You're not on one side or the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think like agender is like completely like with no regard for this spectrum within your identity. But I feel like a non-binary is usually a place on the male-female spectrum for most people.
I think sometimes, a lot of the time, it's almost like a third option in between. It's weird. And it varies radically between individuals. The issue that I come on is that gender is still something that exists within us as human beings, as people. Are we going to take our interests or things that we're enthusiastic about and make that gender? That just it really just feels like defining gender out of existence, and I have yet to meet someone who genuinely is extremely dysphoric with not being called cat self or frog self, those kind of things. It's people who want to like it I believe that gender is something deeper than the things that we're interested in.
I think gender can mean whatever the fuck you want it to mean, and I mean that wholeheartedly. Meaning, I don't believe that, trans women or non-binary people or these solidly existing gender identities ought to be, invalidated or like considered outdated or like relics of a past, because I truly believe that these are solid and useful ways to categorize people. However, I also think that if somebody truly like feels that they ought to be categorized in such a meaningful way, as cat self or as frog gender or whatever the hell they got going on. I don't think that takes away from what we have going on, and I don't think the existence of frog gender people removes any of the implications behind manhood, womanhood, or non-binaryhood, or any other pre-existing gender identity. I think you're just creating like an abstract idea that's completely outside of that, and I think most people would see it as that. I don't think it threatens anyone else's, like, the validity or stability of anyone else's gender identity or its implications.
I don't think that it threatens it. It's
you're saying it's defining gender out of existence. To say that it's defining gender out of existence would imply that it is somehow invalidating the pre-existing gender identity, right?
Well, it's saying here is something that, okay, see, I really wasn't prepared to have this conversation. You know, gender is something that I and you both experience. And it's tacking a whole new potential meaning onto that when I think it could just be a whole separate thing. Like, and I haven't spoken to, I have spoken to people who use neopronouns like this before. And I don't know, I feel like it's unnecessary to say, this is my gender, I am a cat. You can just really like cats, or really like dressing up as cats, or acting like a cat. But
and most people who really like acting like a cat, or, you know, having cats, they really like cats, etc., etc., most of those people don't feel the need to call themselves cat or cat self. But
yes,
the fact that these people feel the need shows you that that's not all that's going on there.
But see, most of these people don't singularly go by cat self. See,
no,
I'm
they
sorry
don't.
that I'm just dunking on cat self people right now. I don't even actually dislike them. I'm just kind of perplexed by them.
I think you're on the wrong side of history. There will be a future. There will be a future where I will be a hero for all this time, having been in support of all these crazy gender people that the rest of humanity despises. I will be a fucking hero.
I don't despise them.
I will be like the people in the 1800s who were like pro-gay marriage, just like absolutely radically correct for their time period.
I remember something I used to think about was like, I wonder if in 50 years we're going to have like a furry president or something like that. Like,
absolutely.
Just radical acceptance will just, which I don't believe having a furry president would be a bad thing, to be clear. But I think that this is something that can exist outside of the definition of gender. I think that it is just entirely redefining gender in a way that is not necessary in most cases. And if someone is listening to this and you use neopronouns like this, not the ones that are just trying to create a new word to refer to people as, but one that somehow relates to a special interest, something like that, and you feel extremely suicidal when you are not called that, I apologize, genuinely. And I will call you that. Like, I don't think that my feelings about this are more important than your feelings of comfort and safety. But
can you imagine if I said that about non-binary people? Like, yeah, I think it's bullshit. I think you're just making it up. But I mean, if you're gonna kill yourself if I don't call you they, then I guess I will. Someone's gonna clip that. Anyways. Listen, I already have clips on you, okay? I have some funny clips of you talking.
I know.
I have some funny clips of you saying, if you want to find out what 90% of the world thinks of you people, I'll give you a free ticket to the Middle East. I have that clip of you. And I do have it saved as Felonious Ferris's opinion on racial minorities.mp3 on my computer. So it's ready to go. I've got the fucking nuclear launch code.
My career is over.
Yeah. I'm sure you're laughing. I'm hearing nothing on Discord.
It's just not going through on Discord. Oh, man. Oh, God. Oh, anyways.
I don't think you need to be intensely suicidal for your pronouns to be valid. And I also don't think I don't think that that's ever the basis for the validity of identity. If someone was like insanely suicidal, because like, I don't know, somebody didn't say that they were a kite, and not just identified as a kite, but like physically, like, I am materially identical to that of the kite that you buy at the store. The same kites that I have to tell customers every day that we don't have at Walmart because we don't have fucking kites. Stop asking us. Like, that wouldn't validate their identity. Like, I would call them a kite, obviously, because they would kill themselves. Like, I would say, sure, you're materially identical to a kite. Now let's fly this kite to the fucking psych ward. That's what I would say. But genuinely speaking, like, that doesn't validate their identity. So, like, I think that's kind of a cop-out. I'm gonna be real with you. Oh, if you're actively suicidal, I'll call you that. Like, that seems so patronizing.
See, the thing is, I do not believe that liking cats can be a part of your gender identity.
Well,
I believe that gender is more than that.
Let's shift. Okay, whatever. Cat isn't a gender. We could say that. We can say it doesn't have to. You don't have to make that your gender identity. Fine. What if it is such a significant part of your identity that, sure, maybe it's not your gender, but you decide that you wish to derive pronouns not necessarily from gender, but from some other thing that is very particularly interesting. Because after all, pronouns, while traditionally derived from gender, I mean, it has to do with our identity. It's an implication of our identity. Who says that it has to be gendered?
Hold on, repeat that?
So, who says pronouns have to be indicative of a gender identity? Because the reason why I, as a trans woman, wish to be called she is because of the implications that it holds, many of the social implications that it holds. But who says that has to apply to gender or something that is in relation to sex, right? Or a traditional gender role? Who's to say that can't, you don't wish to be referred to and categorized by your love of cats or by your special interest more so than gender identity? Because I do think we live in a world, and especially fucking Gen Alpha, they're becoming more and more defined by their special interests than traditional roles that we have been forced into.
I believe it's possible for someone like that to exist out there, like the kind of people that they make a BBC short on, and then all of the old people go, "What has the world come to?" Most of those people I would get along very well with in real life. I have a very hard time believing that there are a lot of them that exist.
You know, there are children that when their parents, like, we're talking like 3-year-olds, their parents will say, "Good night, I love you," and the kid will just naturally, without questioning it, say, "Good night, Mom, like and subscribe."
I did see that meme. That was pretty funny.
It's real.
Funny in a horrifying kind of way.
In a world where people are saying like and subscribe to their parents before they go to bed, who the fuck is to tell that kid, like, where they derive the most important part of their identity? Like, this is a thing. That is a thing that arose from parents not having the time to raise their own children, those children needing to be raised by YouTube instead. That's a terrible And that's not
thing.
where trans people come from?
No.
I'm kidding.
Not at all.
I mean, listen, we could pretend, or we can point to the fact that we both watched Minecraft roleplay on YouTube. and both ended up in the same place later in life, okay? Let's be honest with ourselves.
Listen, I don't think that Minecraft roleplay trans is your gender. Okay?
Neither do I.
But I think what you're arguing right now is, oh, look at these kids who have been so horrifically fucked up by the current state of our society. Now, rather than trying to help them connect with human beings around them, we are to just allow them to live their lives on the internet as this kind of weird, barely alive creature.
That's not really what I'm saying. I'm not saying that like this torturous state that these children are like living in is exactly why neopronouns exist, or at least like neopronouns related to special interests exist. What I'm saying is that they live in such a radically different reality that I have a hard time believing that just like, like I have a hard time responding to like, nobody actually feels that way. Nobody's mind is like actually this occupied by this thing. Because what I'm saying is what occupies the minds of people is so, you'd be surprised what's out there.
Yes. And
being a trans woman, if there was no patriarchy and no fucking like, if it wasn't for the patriarchy and oppression of women, I probably would not identify as a trans woman today. That doesn't make my identity invalid or wrong. It's just like kind of a cause and it's kind of like an abstract cause and effect that over time managed to happen.
I just think that it's okay for pronouns to be used to refer to gender, and people express their interests in other ways. And I do believe that it's, I believe that there is weight to the argument that at a certain point, if someone is not able to exist in any other way, if someone needs this in order to continue living, then, whatever. I'll call you cat self.
But the difference between you and I is that I think that their identity is completely valid and doesn't threaten like the basis of anything.
I don't think that it threatens anything. I believe that it's,
when you say defining gender out of existence, that statement is identical to threatening the foundation or basis of my gender identity. It's the same thing. Is it not?
I don't think so.
Then what is defining gender out of existence, and why are you afraid of that idea?
Because I think that gender means a lot to a lot of people, and that we don't need to make it this entirely vague, nebulous concept, because it is something that's really important to a lot of people.
So you're saying it threatens the foundation of people's gender identity? That's what you're saying. You're saying it's important to a lot of people. So if it's important to a lot of people, are you afraid that we're going to lose it?
God, you're such a silly goose. You know that?
Okay, well,
you drag me into this conversation about neopronouns that I'm entirely unprepared for.
You call it unprepared. I call it wrong. If you're saying you're afraid of it defining gender out of existence.
I'm not afraid of anything. I just
homophobic. Okay. I'm not afraid of anything. Shut the fuck up, Dad.
I just think that it's okay for these things to be different. I think it's okay for your interests to be different than your gender and your gender expression, which is what pronouns are to a certain extent.
Okay, then why did you go on that rant about how gender identity is really important to people? Why is the importance of gender identity, or why is the importance of gender identity relevant and something to bring up if you aren't afraid of, if you don't feel that it's threatened? Because that's what it really seems like right now.
Because it is important to a lot of people. It is something that is very concrete to a lot of people. And if it wasn't, I'd say, whatever, define it out of existence. I don't care.
How does its importance conflict with people's desire to come up with crazy shit like cat self? How are they? How
Because-
are they conflicted?
Because, Demi, would I... Okay, I'm trying to come up with... Like, think of it like musical genres. Genres of art, even.
Yeah.
Like, if someone made a oil painting and said, this is music, should we just shrug our shoulders? I mean, I think it's okay for words to mean things, and for us to have ways of categorizing
You know what? I have a
things.
perfect example for this.
We don't need these categories to become extremely broad to, like, I don't think it's necessary.
Felonious Ferris, what do you think about smooth jazz?
Smooth jazz?
Yeah, smooth jazz. You know, Kenny G and all the other not so famous smooth jazz
I don't listen
people.
to smooth jazz, to be honest.
Do you know about smooth jazz? Do you understand its relationship with jazz and the sort of historical conflict between smooth jazz and real jazz?
Yes.
So, okay. This fucking guy, a bunch of people, including like Grover Washington Jr. and later on like Kenny G, these jazz musicians created music that, you know, within the jazz genre that was arguably simple, repetitive, more pop-like, more in complexity comparable to something like funk or R&B than jazz in its traditional complexity. When you say jazz as a jazz musician, there are a lot of implications of being a jazz musician, including like your ability to improvise, your ability to work with all kinds of different fucking scales and shit. I'm not like a jazz musician or an instrumentalist, so I don't really understand it fully, but I think I understand it enough conceptually. These guys came out and started playing music that was more different, more palpable to like a general audience. It was more R&B like, and it became known as smooth jazz. And jazz old heads fucking hated it. They hated it because they felt that when you hear jazz, you want to think of like super intricate, complex shit that requires a lot of skill that these people don't have necessarily, or these people don't exactly exhibit or showcase in their music. And I understood that. I totally understand the hatred for smooth jazz. After all, jazz it's prestigious. It's there's a lot of value to jazz that isn't present in smooth jazz. However, smooth jazz does not threaten jazz. Let's be honest with ourselves. Smooth jazz simply does not threaten jazz. It exists as, a subgenre. It exists with a relationship to jazz. But at the end of the day, nobody is going to hear Grover Washington Jr. and say, I never want to hear Miles Davis ever again. It doesn't happen. And I guess I feel very similarly about cat gender, frog gender, deer gender. I keep talking about like otherkin shit, like animal gender, but really just if you're fucking microwave gender, if you are literally an attack helicopter.
Microwave gender.
I feel similarly to that I feel about smooth jazz. While it is true that the word gender is defined in a very specific way, that, is the very basis and foundation for a lot of shit that we talk about. The word gender has a lot of implications that really do not hold up in this context. I simply don't care. I don't feel like it threatens my understanding of what gender is, and I don't think it threatens the implications of gender. I think it's just, like you said, existing outside of it. I don't think calling it gender, is bad. I don't care. Just like I don't care. I don't think smooth jazz being called smooth jazz really changes anyone's perception of like jazz traditionally, and what it really means, or what it traditionally means, what it means in this context, that context. I really, really think that if we need to expand the concept of gender to apply to these weird things, people live in a completely different world, and it's not my place to tell them that they can't do that they can't put these words together. And if it's useful to them, then it's useful to them. And you know what? If you want to be called cat self, that's what cat is going to be called.
See, the thing is, I'm not out here railing against people or going and beating someone to death for saying I use cat self.
Yeah, but I have to be the good guy, so I need you to be a little more of a bad guy.
Yeah, I'm going out here and I'm grabbing that tiny 4'8" middle schooler by the fucking collar of their shirt and I'm lifting them in the air and screaming in their face, "You aren't a cat! You aren't a cat!" That's exactly what I'm doing here. I think that, to me, especially, being able to categorize things is just important in my head. And it makes me feel very frazzled. This is a common thing when definitions get so broad that things can't really be defined in one way or another anymore. And I genuinely, I was that kid who was obsessed with animals. I still am, to a certain extent. But
yeah, I like to dress in men's clothes sometimes, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna call myself a man and expect people to treat me that way.
I also don't think that it's reasonable to parallel this to the trans discussion.
I think it's fair. I think it's very fair.
I really don't think it is.
I don't think their experience is the same, but I think a lot of the arguments you're making are like exactly the same. A lot of the arguments against them and the resistance they face is completely identical. And derived from the same place as a lot of transphobia, which is why another reason why I'm very sympathetic to it.
Derived from it's not from the same place though, because gender.
Okay, let's do some bullet points. Gender is traditionally defined, or we define gender as this, and this goes against our understanding of gender, so it's bad. These people, these people have special interests, and so do I, but that doesn't mean I have to call myself a cat just because I like cats. You can like cats without identifying as a cat. Where have we heard this before? Come on.
Gender is something... I'm not even saying kids can't go around with cat ears on wearing cattails. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm not even
go right
saying...
ahead.
I'm not even saying boys can't wear women's clothing. I'm just saying I'm not going to call you a woman. That's what you sound like.
It's
the same... Okay.
Whether or not
hey,
same,
shut up.
No, you shut up. I haven't been able to say anything in like 5 minutes.
Shut up. No,
you shut up.
One last thing.
No, let me have my argument.
Fine, fuck you.
Let me talk about the things that you're saying at me. Gender is something that was pre-existing, and I do believe that being transgender, it can be something where you're just born like that, or it can be something where you develop socially in a way where now you need to be referred to as, and exist as the opposite sex.
I think it's
or
almost
the gender
always
role that would be.
Almost always a mix of the two things.
Stop interrupting me.
Sorry.
I do believe that it can be a mix of the two things. And this is stuff that has existed, like sex and gender is just kind of inherent to human beings. That is us as a species. And we can...
Wasn't always like that.
And some people have one sex and are the opposite gender. And I think furthermore, as trans people, we need to exist as a gender other than our assigned gender at birth. Otherwise, it is catastrophic. It prevents us from having a decent quality of life, which is one of the biggest reasons why so many people have accepted us in the first place, because they realized that otherwise we're going to die.
But
and that's a lot of the reason why they were willing to redefine gender the way it has been redefined.
Do you think if gender dysphoria didn't exist, there would even be a need for trans people's identity to be affirmed?
Hold on, repeat that?
If there was no gender dysphoria, would we have a need to affirm people's preferred gender identity?
I think that it can be.
What do you think about trans people without dysphoria? That's the real question.
How you define dysphoria. Dysphoria is defined differently by different people, but I believe that if it
dysphoria is
if
the
it
discomfort
makes
with your
if
sex
someone
assigned
is
at birth that is so I guess devastating that you need to change. You need to address it, and typically with like a gender transition. Not like the mismatch of identity and sex. That's not really what dysphoria is. Dysphoria refers to the discomfort. If there is no discomfort,
okay.
is there a need to affirm trans identity? Because I think there is.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I believe that people should be able to do whatever they want and exist however they want. But I also believe that it's okay for us to define gender a certain way, as long as it isn't hurting people. I believe I like you, I believe that the definition of gender should be utilitarian. Whatever definition hurts the least number of people. Let's go with that. And
makes sense logically, right?
Yes, and makes sense logically. It does not make sense logically to have your gender have to do with an animal that you like or a video game that you like.
I don't believe that in our gender studies class we need to say that gender is a set of characteristics that are derived from the relationship between sexes. And also, if you really like cats or not. I don't think we're at that point. I don't think we need to do that. But I just don't think that people calling themselves cat gender and mainly affirming their pronouns is like a problem at all. I think if anything, it's here's my fucking hot take that I wanted to do this episode and was reluctant to. I think it's very important for everyone to manage their expectations when it comes to their gender identity being affirmed. In cis old white people's society, it's extremely important to be able to manage your expectations. For example, if you go by cat self, I will call you cat and cat self. I will do that. I cannot expect all of humanity to do that. Humanity's not at that place right now. And I cannot expect all of humanity to do that. There are people who are so blind and like just unaware of this concept and where it comes from and what the fuck it means. And I'd say the same thing about non-binary people. I would say being called a... There's never a problem with asserting that you wish to be called they and expecting people to call you that. You just, however, need to... The reality that not everyone is going to understand you and call you they is something you need to accept. Would you agree with that, Felonious Ferris?
Yes.
It's an important thing you have to accept. And I'm not saying you have to make peace with it. At least make peace with that system. But you have to make peace with the fact that that is a part of your life. It's because you'd be deluding yourself otherwise. Me too, as a trans woman. I have to make peace with the fact that people are going to call me sir when they look at me. And that's like, and I'm going to have to deal with that for the rest of my life. I am sir. I am he. That's something I will never escape. And the alternative to accepting that reality is throwing a temper tantrum every time I'm called sir. And you can't do that. Allowing being called sir to make you actively suicidal. That's not okay. That's not the right answer. The right answer is making peace with it somehow and understanding that people have a different understanding that collides with yours, and it doesn't make you wrong. It's just that society is wrong. Society is wrong about these things.
Okay. Where are you going with this?
I'm saying while I am fully willing to call somebody cat self and cooperate with their preferred pronouns, no matter how fucking insane they sound to the average person, I can't tell people to like run into the world and expect everyone to fully understand it. Just like I can't expect that with normal trans people. And I'm not saying that that's okay or that you should make peace with that establishment or not try to challenge it. It's just that if you go in expecting everyone to immediately conform, in a society that is fucking hateful and built on the backbone of hierarchy and conformity, if you enter that with the expectation of open arms acceptance, you will be disappointed and it will have drastic ramifications on your mental health. If I enter a Starbucks and assume, if I enter a Starbucks and say my womanhood is valid, and since my womanhood is valid, that means everyone's going to call me a she and they're going to call me ma'am. That reality is going to be shattered pretty immediately, and it will have devastating effects on my mental health because you tie the two things. You tie your validity to society's acceptance of you.
Yes, I understand. And that's actually one of the number one reasons why I believe that affirming trans people is so important. Obviously, I'm trans. I have dysphoria. I know firsthand what this is like. And the reason why I believe it is just wrong to purposefully misgender a trans person, to not allow them into like the bathroom that they identify with.
The bathroom.
I believe that is wrong.
I identify as a women's bathroom.
Yes. I believe that is wrong because of the suffering it causes. And now that we've said, okay, in order to avoid profound suffering, we're going to redefine gender. Now dysphoria isn't necessary because we've already redefined it. But the reason why it was necessary in the first place was because of people with severe dysphoria.
Wait, so you're saying it wouldn't be necessary if it wasn't for people with severe dysphoria in the first place?
For dysphoria, people with dysphoria, period. But I think hold on. I believe
I hate you.
Using absolutes like society is wrong for not calling you cat self. I think that just means that they have a different worldview, and that worldview isn't wrong because it's not hurting anyone. It would be wrong if this was a thing that was causing mass suicide. Not calling people cat self. Then I would take a really hard stance. This is wrong.
I didn't expect you to come out as a true scum on this episode. Jesus Christ.
How am I being a true scum?
You believe the foundation of trans people's validity is dysphoria.
How I would be a true scum if I said people needed to medically transition and have dysphoria in order to be trans. But yes, I believe that the existence of dysphoria is why that trans people exist. I don't believe that people would be.
So do you think
I don't believe that people would have the need or not have the need. They wouldn't have the desire to transition if dysphoric trans people didn't help to redefine gender in the first place.
So if it wasn't
I don't think
for
that's
gender
true scum.
If it wasn't for gender dysphoria, what is true? I might be wrong about this. True scum, I thought, was people who think you need dysphoria to be trans.
Yes, and I don't think that you need dysphoria to be trans. I believe that dysphoria is why the concept of being trans exists. The concept of being trans would not exist if dysphoria did not exist.
If it was like 1963, and so you're saying you would be a true scum before the definitions of gender were changed? Because dysphoria was necessary for that change?
I don't think that people would be trying to transition without dysphoria before we started defining gender the way we have.
I think that is a result. I think gender dysphoria
that is a result
of
us. We redefined gender because not redefining it was hurting people, and that redefinition caused people to start transitioning without dysphoria, which is cool.
You don't think that
Obviously.
people wanted to transition without dysphoria before we redefined gender?
I believe
I
maybe
guarantee you there were
as
drag
maybe
queens in
hold
the
on,
1950s
stop,
who wished to
stop,
be called
stop,
she but didn't
stop,
experience severe discomfort
stop,
by
stop,
the acknowledgement of their
stop,
manhood.
stop. Now you've scattered my thought process. God damn it, don't interrupt me like that.
Stop being wrong.
Don't interrupt me like that, seriously, otherwise I won't be able to formulate my argument.
All right, do it.
Now I've completely...
So there wouldn't be a need, people wouldn't feel the need to transition if it weren't for the redefinition of gender, right? People who didn't have dysphoria wouldn't feel the need to transition if
But
it weren't
drag
for the
queens-
already existing concept.
Drag queens weren't transitioning. They were...
Some of them,
They were
there
performing...
No, drag has
okay,
absolutely been an outlet for trans women. Let's be
Yes.
honest with ourselves.
Yes, but it is not synonymous with being trans.
No, of course not. You know that I know this.
Yes.
But
So you're
I'm coming up with an
saying-
example. I'm coming up with an example. Say someone in like
So, wait.
1954. I guarantee you
Okay,
there's somebody out
wait,
there.
hold on. But drag queens, I don't understand what the argument is that you're trying to make, because drag queens who were, many of which were just gay men who enjoyed it as a hobby, would be going on stage dressed as women to sing and dance and entertain. That's not being trans.
I know. I'm not arguing that is synonymous with transness. However, I do think that during a time, back in the day, somebody who did desire a transition, say someone assigned male at birth, who identified as a woman, that really was the only place they could go to exhibit that and to
yes.
To do that. So I think the majority of people who were assigned male at birth that managed to without gender dysphoria, I believe that there were hypothetical people, say in the 1950s or 60s, who did identify as women, did not experience gender dysphoria, but saw drag as an outlet of exhibiting womanhood that made them feel good.
I mean, I think that this goes back to how we define gender dysphoria, because there are related concepts where
I'm pretty sure the DSM-5 would define it as like clinically significant distress related to your gender or your sex assigned at birth.
I don't think that people this broad notion of gender as a social construct. I don't believe that people who had no... I don't believe that people were just choosing to transition just because it's something that they enjoyed or something that made them happy, because there was such an overwhelming amount of misery that comes from it, especially during that time period when at that point you'd be rolled up in a carpet and set on fire if anyone ever found you out.
I'm just saying it's hypothetically possible, and if somebody, I'm just saying that at the time
anything
wouldn't.
is hypothetically possible.
I'm not saying that there was a huge population of these people. All I'm saying is that if there did exist somebody without gender dysphoria who wished to transition at that time period, somebody who did not experience clinically significant distress, suffering, etc., on the basis of their gender, they didn't have that motivation to transition, but they did have a motivation to transition nonetheless. I don't think it would be like empirically false, nor do I think it would be wrong in any way to affirm their gender identity, even in a time period where broadly gender had a very solid definition that conflicted with them.
Obviously, I already
I don't think it would be wrong. I think it would be useful. I think it would be the right thing to do.
I agree with gender being a social construct. And
but you don't agree. You agree that it wasn't defined as a social construct at a certain time period.
And I don't think that before we had that broad redefinition, before people were exposed to gender as a social construct. I don't believe that people without dysphoria or without some related condition were just transitioning like that.
No, but if they were, would it be important to affirm their identity?
You can just say...
I'm using this as example as to make a broader argument. I'm not referring to this poor population.
You can come up with any abstract hypothetical that neither of us can verify. You can come up with any of that and suddenly have your argument validated.
Well, what
That's
I'm saying that if you agreed with this hypothetical, that would threaten your argument, the argument that you're making. If you agreed that hypothetically it would be important to affirm somebody's gender identity if they didn't have dysphoria at a time period where gender identity was broadly defined as simply reflective of your sex assigned at birth, if you would agree with me that at that time period, affirming someone's gender identity who did not experience, and someone's gender identity which conflicted with their sex assigned at birth, affirming that identity without a dysphoria, if you could agree with me that affirming that identity without dysphoria would be important, then that shatters your argument that dysphoria...
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't, because
your
obviously
argument was that dysphoria was the only
trans
real
people
need.
existed back then. It was already the right thing to do
But
to
I'm talking
have
about without
gender
dysphoria.
defined as a... It was already the right thing to do
Okay.
at that point to have gender defined as a social construct. This was always the right thing.
That was the right thing to do, but that wasn't the context in which these people were navigating their gender identity. Do you
No, it
disagree
was
with
not.
that? It was not. It was not the context
So
in which people were navigating their gender identity. So they didn't live in a world. These people weren't...
I'm not saying that it's wrong for someone to transition without dysphoria before ever understanding gender
but I
as
would
a social...
argue
like,
that
that's
it's socially necessary to affirm their identity.
okay. Socially, how do you define socially necessary?
The right thing to do.
Okay. Yes. I mean, I don't know how this relates to
So what I'm saying
to your interests.
What I'm saying is that the necessity to affirm trans identity, even at a time before this, does not rely on a gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is simply, in my opinion, something that accelerated the need. It made the need extremely dire. But the need remains whether or not gender dysphoria exists. And you were saying that this conflicts with the affirmation of abstract gender identities that are based in special interests because we needed this gender dysphoria. So basically, these hypothetical trans people in the 1950s, right, who are navigating a world where gender is directly reflective of your sex assigned at birth, those people, I'm comparing those people to people nowadays with abstract gender identities that don't experience a dire need to transition. I'm arguing that since it was the right thing to affirm this hypothetical trans person without dysphoria's identity back in like 1954, it's still socially necessary. It's also socially necessary to affirm this, I don't know, real life trans person who doesn't necessarily have a dire need to be affirmed. They're not at risk of suicide.
I do not believe that wanting to define gender or not wanting to define gender as something this broad is wrong.
I just don't care. I don't see what's threatened by these people considering this to be their gender identity. Gender identity is so fucking abstract.
I think that it's okay for these things to be defined somehow. And I think that it's okay, like jazz and smooth jazz. Obviously, they're like, I believe that your gender identity is I believe that your gender identity is something that is just a piece of your personality. Think of jazz as the personality, and bebop and smooth jazz as being different genres of it. Bebop is gender, and smooth jazz is interests. It's okay for these things to be different. You don't have to say bebop is smooth jazz.
No. Jazz is gender. In this
paradigm. No! That is not the argument I'm making. You don't
Oh
just
my
get
God.
to change my argument for me, Demigloom.
Well, you deferred to a previously established parallel that I had drawn. So I parallel,
drew a
Jazz
new
was gender.
parallel. I drew a new parallel that I believe is more realistic. That is based off of your parallel. I edited it.
You completely flipped it around. Jazz is the basis, aka our understanding of what gender is in my parallel. What is Jazz in your parallel again?
Jazz, let's say that Jazz is personality.
Okay, Jazz is personality.
Bebop is gender.
Okay.
Smooth jazz, or some other subgenre that you like better because I don't want to... Anyway. And smooth jazz is like interests, hobbies, things that you enjoy, you know. And I think that it's okay for these things to be distinct from one another. It doesn't make one or another invalid, and it doesn't mean that you aren't allowed to have both of them change the way that you live your life, change the way that you present, things like that. But I think that it's okay to stick to pronouns just being in reference to gender when referring to someone.
I don't think they're asking us to stretch our understanding of gender too far when we already have non-binary people and agender people. People are simply like, people are just coming up with silly new words that, describe their place on the spectrum. And perhaps it's related to a special interest. Perhaps their special interest influenced
I don't like my identity as a non-binary person being compared to someone who identifies as cat gender. Because non-binary, to me, it is everything to do with gender, not just things that I'm interested in. It's the way that I want to...
Yeah, I'm not saying that they're the same. All I'm saying is that I think that if we were to extend beyond this to a little
I don't think that it's a logical progression, though. I don't believe that taking someone who goes, I don't think I really fit in as being male or female, and taking someone who goes, I like this animal so much that I believe that it is my gender that I like this animal so much. I don't think that that's a logical progression.
I think there's a lot more to it in someone's decision to identify as an animal. I think it refers to a set of social characteristics that they wish to adopt that exist somewhere on the gender spectrum, and they insert their personal interest in it.
But it has nothing to do with the gender spectrum, though. It doesn't. It has to do with this interest in this animal, acting as this animal, dressing as this animal, being socially treated as this animal, even. That I just do not see how that has anything to do with gender.
I think it usually refers
in the way that
it usually has
in
to
the
do
way
with,
that
go on.
In the way that I just don't see. I don't think that redefining gender again in such a broad way is necessary. And because it's not like this dire need, like we need to start redefining gender like this. I don't see, like, it does not seem logical to me to just redefine it like this.
But it would be logical to redefine it in your personal life in 1954 towards somebody whose gender identity juxtaposed with their sex assigned at birth, who was navigating a concept where gender only reflected the gender in its definition only reflected your sex assigned at birth. In that situation, it would be important to affirm that person's identity, correct?
Yes.
So the difference between that situation and the cat
is that
gender
one is an animal and one is a person.
So okay, so I need
it's
listen.
Okay to
shut
keep
up.
These
Hey,
things
let me finish.
What
I got to do to get it to the superhuman motherfucker. It's the difference is not So the difference between these things in these time periods is not the dire need, because we've already eliminated the fact that the dire need is what creates the necessity, is like the only thing that can create a necessity to affirm somebody's gender identity. So stop pretending that this, like, you know, this, that we have this dire need situation, and that's like what that's why we redefine
the
gender.
Dire need.
Let's just talk about what the actual problem is, and with where the actual problem and inconsistency lies. The fact that it's derived from a special interest. We can keep talking about this without doing this pretend shit about, well, there's not a social necessity because there's not mass suffering we have to address. Because that mass suffering doesn't need to be addressed in order for this to be addressed and affirmed.
Oh, okay.
Do you not agree with me? You keep deferring back to this idea that because there's no mass suffering, there's no need.
I believe that if there was mass suffering, that would generate a need for us to change the definition again. But as of right now, I think it's okay for these things to be defined differently. I don't think that it is wrong to define these things as being different things.
I don't disagree with you.
Okay, why are you yelling at me then? You've been yelling at me. Let's see how long we've been recording. Wrong. You've been yelling at me for like an hour over this.
In 27 minutes. I don't disagree that we don't need to like extend. I might have contradicted myself a little bit in this because we're talking about something that I haven't thought a whole lot about, but I don't necessarily fundamentally disagree that there isn't a need to completely change the definition of gender for these people. Rather, I would actually argue that we didn't really change the definition of gender in the first place, at least as much as we think we did. I think it was more so updating like the documented definition to reflect the actual social implications of the word. It wasn't like, okay, from now on, this word is going to refer to this. I don't really think that happened. I think it was more so like, I always compare this to motherhood. Mother really meant at one point someone who gave birth to children, right? Your mother was the person who gave birth to you. But over time, we realized when we say mom, we don't really mean, like, we're not really talking, when we say mom, we're not implying, the implication isn't the person gave birth to you. It's more so this person is the woman who raised you, right? The woman who takes care of you. So we kind of were just like, okay, so since when we use this word, we're referring to the woman who takes care of you, and the importance and the emphasis that we are drawing by using this word has little to nothing to do with the circumstances of your birth and who was in the room, and whose pussy you came out of. It has more to do with the social roles. So we were like, you know what, like when a woman adopts a child, the child should just call her mom, because virtually every implication of the word mom works here. And I don't think that at any point people were like, okay, we are redefining mom for the sake of social utility. It was more so a reality check that when we use a word, we're referring to a certain set of concepts.
I also think that it was probably a gradual social shift. There are still people who don't believe that you're a real mother if you didn't give birth to the child that you're raising.
Yeah, well, there's always going to be crazy people like you who thinks that people can't be frog gender. You know, I want you to know right now that you are the people who think that your mom has to give birth to you. That's who you are right now.
Yep, I know.
I am the Chad and you are the Soy Jack. I just need to make this explicitly clear.
God, I think this is the most heated discussion we've gotten into
since for a long time. Let's say that. Let's not talk about,
at least on the podcast.
On the podcast, for sure. We've had some pretty fucking heated arguments.
Yeah, we have.
Our arguments are usually me saying something really stupid that is very easy to misinterpret, and in fact, logical to misinterpret, because my intentions were not illustrated clearly, and then you, like, refusing to let me explain myself. That's why we fight.
That's not what happens.
No, it absolutely is, because you take everything you would. It doesn't happen anymore. I think we've grown to understand each other a lot better. But there was certainly a time where I would like say something, that was either it was a joke or I was being hyperbolic or whatever. The statement at face value did not reflect what I intended to communicate, and you
I would
really,
never
really,
refuse.
really. I
would
you
never
felt,
refuse to let you explain yourself.
No,
You'd
but
explain yourself, and I'd go, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." I'd just
you're,
be very upset for a split second because you said something insane.
I think there was a time where you were much more reluctant to believe me when I explained myself. I think you had this impression that I was like grifting or like just didn't want people to be mad at me. So I would just be like, oh, actually, I didn't mean that. But I think you've grown to realize that I actually do suck at communicating sometimes. Do you deny that has happened?
I believe that is true, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not like that. I don't like say shit and then when I get a negative, I think you know that I'm not afraid of a negative reaction at this point.
Yeah.
I am not afraid of a negative reaction. A negative reaction is not going to convince me to be dishonest and take something back. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you and I really fundamentally disagree on a lot here. I think the disagreement literally lies with, can these people call this gender? Should they call this gender? I don't think you and I have I don't think either of us have a problem with this person existing, right?
No.
And within their own space, going by frog
if
pronouns.
If I was born 5, 6, 7 years after I had been born, there was a good chance that I would be this person. I genuinely have nothing wrong. I have no quarrel. They like that's I'm not out here whenever I see cat self in someone's bio, I don't immediately start arguing with them. I usually shrug my shoulders and move on. I always shrug my shoulders and move on. I've never actually argued with a neopronouns person about this.
The real difference is I will call them cat self when I have a conversation with them, and you will not. You won't do that.
I will call them by their other neopronouns or by they them if they're comfortable with that. If they're not comfortable with that, I will just call them cat self. You know.
So you will. So if that's the only thing
if that's the only thing that they're comfortable being referred to as, that is fine. At that point, I don't want to cause someone discomfort or suffering because of the language that makes sense to me most in my mind.
Hold on a second. I gotta go to messenger.com. Felonious Ferris. Felonious Ferris, 4:50 p.m. July 18th, 2023. I'm a little edgy and controversial with neopronouns. I'm not calling anyone cat/cat self. Would you like to explain this chat log? I'm Chris Hansen from To Catch a Transphobe.
God, you fucking piece of shit.
You're lying. You're being dishonest. You're being dishonest to look better.
You were just talking about how you used to be hyperbolic all the time with me and it would just fly straight over my head.
Well, is this being hyperbolic? Or because this seems
it
like
is.
You're clearly stating that you will not call somebody cat self. This doesn't seem ambiguous at all.
If I did this every single fucking time you said something that was inconsistent, God damn it, Demigloom. You bitch, you piece of shit.
Okay, let it be known that I'd said this because it was really funny. But also, this genuinely... just use a cat nickname or something, not your pronouns, LMFAO. I mean, you have said in this debate, like, that you've said pretty clearly that you wouldn't call someone cat self. Is this not true anymore? Did you change your mind? Or were you just lying? Or joking?
I don't feel so strongly about it that I would sacrifice someone's comfort and feeling of safety for it.
So did you say this under the assumption that this hypothetical cat self that we're talking about doesn't really experience that discomfort? Is that what you...
Yes.
Okay. Are you willing to say that it's not their job to prove to you or even to disclose to you that there's this discomfort, but rather if they say cat self, I'm only going by cat self. and if you call them they, and they're like, "Hi, please just call me cat self or cat." Do they need to show you? Do they need to show you like hospital records to prove that they're suicidal,
Jesus
or
Christ.
are you
Jesus
just gonna?
Christ.
Will you just call them that at that point?
I might start a conversation. I might ask them about it
Oh my god!
and their experience with it.
You really do get more conservative as you get older. Ever since your 20th birthday, things just haven't been the same.
What's wrong with starting a conversation with someone? I think that if I'm better able to understand, I think that understanding and discourse is a key part of having empathy. So.
No, I totally think it's okay to start a conversation. I just don't think you need to have that conversation before you're willing to affirm their pronouns when they've clearly stated that this is what you call me. I see the same shit with non-binary people. They're like, all right, listen, I need to be called they. And, let's have a conversation about this. Like, wouldn't that be really fucking annoying?
See, I wouldn't do this. See, there's also so few of these people that exist that this is likely never going to happen to me.
Okay, I'm going to exclusively promote this podcast among people with crazy neopronouns, just so I have the largest audience of people on my side.
Oh, Jesus
possible.
Christ.
This will be an echo chamber of anti-Felonious Ferris hatred.
Oh, God. Oh, no.
No, I'm not mad at you. I understand that my opinions that I've expressed tonight are absolutely fucking insane and radical. I am an extremist at this point. Like, I'm fully willing to admit that.
Oh, God.
I guess all I can ask people to do is to listen to my logic when it comes to all I can ask people is to not use the fact that I will affirm people's crazy neopronouns as a scapegoat when I defend like non-binary people and such, because I don't want people to be like, oh well, this person literally believes in cat gender, so I'm not even gonna listen to a word they said. Like, listen, like if you think this is fucking insane, then whatever. But like, listen to my other opinions. Don't just like discredit everything I have to say because you think this is crazy.
Mm-hmm. And if you're a hyper woke, mega radical 15-year-old on Twitter, please don't crucify me. Please.
They're not. Listen, I'm not gonna join the woke mob against you. This is what I tell to my friend Riley all the time. I'm not gonna join the woke mob against you, but I'm not gonna stop them.
So if they were dragging me out of my bed at night to crucify me, it wouldn't stop them.
Yeah,
Wow.
Exactly. Like when my friend Riley is like, I don't understand. I just want to say the soft A N-word because it's really funny. I'm like, look, don't do that. That's fucked up. I have my reasonings for thinking that that's not okay. I'm not gonna end my friendship with you over that, but that's gross and cringe. And all I'm gonna say is, when the woke mob comes for you, I'm not gonna be your token. I'm not gonna stop them. I'm not gonna stop you from getting the criticism you deserve.
Someone. See, I think it's previously established that I'm all for non-binary names. I love them actually. Whenever I hear someone say like, "My name's Dragon," it sparks such great delight in me.
Absolutely.
In my soul. Literally, just change your name to Cat, and I will call you that.
Change your name to they, and I'll call you that, Felonious Ferris.
Uh-huh.
We forgot to talk about neopronouns that aren't cats. We forgot to talk about like fae, fair, and stuff. What do you think about those?
I established at the beginning that I think that that's just how language evolves. They don't want to be... I think a lot of it started with people being like, oh, using singular they isn't grammatical, so we're going to come up with a new pronoun for that. I think that that's just the way that language evolves, and that's fine. And I will use those pronouns. We come up with new words all the time to describe new things, new states of human existence.
And sometimes they're influenced by special interest. Sometimes a little bit of your special interest
I'm not.
shines
I'm
through
not
in it.
going around. I'm not going around in circles with you again.
So
I'm
if
all
it was like
done.
1955, right,
I'm
and someone
all
didn't have
done. I'm
dysphoria,
all done. I'm all done. No
I think
more.
this is probably one of the worst episodes we ever did. But I have a feeling
Yeah.
people are gonna really enjoy it. I see. Like, I didn't enjoy this that much. I don't think you enjoyed this either.
No, it was
This
stressful.
was not fun. It was very
and I'm
stressful.
afraid. I'm afraid because people have such strong opinions about this.
You think
No
I'm not afraid?
nuance allowed. No nuance allowed.
Oh, I think
I'm
I brought plenty of
terrified.
nuance to the table, personally.
You did. You did.
Maybe a little too much nuance. Maybe I think I might have gotten a little lost in the nuance with some of my hypotheticals, but
You and your goddamn hypotheticals. You love coming up with the
well,
abstract hypothetical for every single argument.
hypotheticals are great for like challenging like the strength of your position. Because if they don't hold up in a hypothetical, like I think that can be a really good way of proving that there's some kind of bias or emotional influence. But then there's also people who come up with hypotheticals that like the thing with the hypotheticals is they have to be like parallel. And if they're not parallel and there are like factors that change somebody's response to them, you can't just go like, gotcha. You said this in this situation, but not this situation, when there are like different things. But the thing is, you will have to explain the difference between the hypothetical and the other situation. But also, it can also be, sorry, one last thing. It can also be a trap. Some people will come up with like such crazy fucking hypotheticals that are so difficult to like navigate.
That's what
that
you do.
No, I don't. See, here's my thing. If I'm okay, was my fucking non-dysphoria in 1955, 1954 hypothetical too complicated to be applicable in this situation? Because I thought it was a good hypothetical.
I don't think that too complicated was the case, but I just don't think that it made sense in terms of the argument, but you were saying it did.
I think it made sense.
You were saying if you agree with a trans person with no dysphoria before the concept of being trans existed, then you have to agree that
No. I didn't say that. I said that when you said the necessity to change the definition of gender was solely based on this like widespread dysphoria and suffering, and that was the necessity. I challenged that by giving you an example of somebody without dysphoria in a time period where they were navigating a world where I gave you this. I'm tired of fucking articulating this over and over again, but
yes.
I was attempting to challenge that notion by bringing up somebody without dysphoria in a time where the definition of gender was widely considered to be reflective of your genitalia, right? So that was what I was trying to contradict. I wasn't trying to say, I understand that to compare that person to a cat self required further articulation, and I tried to provide that articulation afterward, but the hypothetical itself wasn't intended to bring you to the cat self. Like I wasn't like once you said yes to that hypothetical, I wasn't trying to be like, see, cat self is right. It's over. Like that wasn't. I think my problem is my hypotheticals have like too many steps. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, now that you agree with this within this hypothetical, then we change this, and then we change, and it just gets like we're writing a storybook here. Like it can get a little bit weird. But I didn't think the hypothetical was bad. Maybe the way I went about it was. I'd like to hear in the comments what people thought about my amazing hypothetical. And also, go comment below, who do you think won this debate and who do you agree with? Personally, I think we both performed pretty poorly. This wasn't my best debate performance, and I didn't intend this to be a debate.
I didn't either. So I was entirely unprepared for a full-blown debate.
So was I. But I still think
this is embarrassing, to be honest, for both of us.
For both of us, yeah. I'm sure each of us think it was a little more embarrassing for the other person, because we both think we're right.
I think it was more embarrassing for me, mostly just because I both have very little experience with debate in this kind of format. and was entirely unprepared for a debate. So I'm deeply inexperienced, and it showed.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not exactly super experienced myself. I've had a total of 2 like formal debates ever. I've just developed a lot of really good like argument skills, mainly from arguing with people in my life. I don't think anyone would deny that I'm good at arguing. I think I'm great at fucking arguing shit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
I just
think
bad at talking. I'm bad at oral speech.
articulating yourself.
See, I can articulate myself through text, though.
I don't think you're as bad as you think you are.
I think I think that I have a lot of insecurity about it built up because it used to be a lot worse.
Yeah, well, I think you're a fine podcast host, and to be a fine podcast host, you have to be able to articulate yourself pretty decently. And I think
it's also the sheer amount of energy I need to burn on being a decent podcast host. Right now, my legs and my back are entirely covered in sweat.
Me too.
I'm gonna need to change my shirt and my pants just from
same.
fucking focusing. I hate talking.
Do you have a fan on?
No.
I don't either. I can't record with a fan on. It ruins my recording. I wouldn't subject you to that same cutthroat standard, but having no fan on the recording does really help.
I'm also sitting in a leather chair, which is especially bad.
I'm sitting in like a computer chair from like Goodwill that's like falling apart, so it's extremely uncomfortable. Somebody has probably ejaculated in this chair, and a cat has probably urinated on this chair at some point.
Oh, man. You can't think about that stuff too hard with used furniture.
Listen,
you need to put it out of your mind.
The word used might as well, like, remember when we talked about the implications of words and how we should change, like, how their definitions kind of just naturally evolve? I think the word used, the definition in the dictionary should be has been pissed on by an animal and ejaculated on by a human, because that's used furniture, dude. That's what used furniture is.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I don't like to think about the history of every object that I touch. If you do that, you're gonna trace every piece of matter back to fecal matter at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I think literally everything has been shit out at some point. Every physical element.
All the water
lives.
that we drink was once piss.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Do you have anything else you want to say, or are we ready to go?
Nope.
We're 2 hours in.
Let's do no more talking. All done.
All right.
Look us up. Demigloom, Felonious Ferris. We're on platforms.
I also did a debate on non-binary people where I held a position that was less insane than this one and did a really, really good job of articulating myself. So go on the Demigloom main channel. Just look up Demigloom on YouTube. Subscribe to that channel. It's great shit.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.